I'm standing in this over-air-conditioned media room. Screens are glowing on every wall, and I am realizing I am basically watching the United States drift out of the grown-ups table in real time while Donald Trump is staging yet another public nervous breakdown. And I am telling you this as someone who is physically here, watching it, smelling the burnt coffee and the cold fries, listening to the cable panels trying to pretend any of this is normal. And I am feeling that familiar mix of fury and dark amusement rising up again because the contrast is ridiculous, almost cinematic. If the movie is a political horror comedy that is never ending, on one screen the G20 summit is playing, leaders are walking across a blue carpet, shaking hands, talking, smiling that diplomatic half smile, and I am seeing flags from Canada, South Korea, the EU, Japan, all moving together like a slow tide. And on the ticker I am reading phrases like new ties, global cooperation, emerging alliances. And I am thinking, okay, the world is clearly moving on, building something, whatever it is, imperfect but at least adult. Then I am turning my head, and on another screen I am seeing Trump's world, and it is looking like the discount bin version of geopolitics, all caps, posts, and rage, and this absurd story about his people meeting Russian officials in Miami of all places, like we are not even pretending subtlety anymore. And I am hearing some producer behind me whisper, "Are we seriously doing Miami peace talks now?" And I am quietly laughing, because yes, apparently we are seriously doing Miami peace talks now. I am scrolling my phone, and I am seeing the headline about Trump allies sitting down with Russian envoys to work out some plan for Ukraine. And I am muttering to myself, of course they are. Because why would you stand with actual allies when you can cosplay as a proxy for Moscow in a resort town? And the sarcasm is basically dripping out of my ears at this point. I am watching Trump's quote pop up on the Chiron, him saying that Ukraine's president can either take the deal or fight his little heart out. And I'm feeling my jaw clenching as I am thinking, there it is again. That trademark combination of cruelty and fake toughness that is playing so well with people who are never the ones actually fighting anything. I'm seeing the outlines of this so-called plan. The whispered details about forcing Ukraine to give up territory, shrinking their army, banning NATO troops from their soil, and I am sitting here watching it scroll by like it is just another policy debate, instead of what it is looking like to me, which is Trump essentially acting like a real estate broker for someone else's country, carving it up like it is another failed casino he is offloading. The anchors are trying to use calm voices. They are saying words like controversial, unconventional, outsider approach. And I am wanting to throw my notebook at the screen because I am not seeing unconventional. I am seeing desperate. I am seeing a man who is watching the rest of the world build new rooms without him and is clinging to the one door still half open, even if that door is marked Kremlin. A younger reporter sitting next to me is leaning over and is whispering, "Is this really happening?" And I am answering, "Yeah, this is happening." And we are all sitting here live streaming the decline like it is entertainment. And I am hearing my own voice sounding more bitter than I intend, but I am not walking it back because I am done sugarcoating any of this. On another feed I am seeing Canada's representative speaking about new partnerships. I am seeing South Korea talking culture and business and long-term strategy. And it is all looking boring in the best possible way, like adults planning the actual future. While back on Trump's favorite platforms, he is raging about traitors and fantasizing about jailing people who are not obeying him enough. And I am thinking, of course our allies are stepping back. Of course they are quietly building Plan B without us. Because if I am this exhausted just watching him, I am imagining what it is like having to rely on him. Somewhere in the room, a producer is calling for B-roll of Trump golfing. Someone else is bringing in a fresh stack of polling graphics. And I am sitting in the middle of all of it, watching the United States under Trump look less like a leader and more like that one chaotic relative at the reunion that everyone is slowly learning to schedule around. And as the Miami meeting story is updating again on my phone, I am realizing we are not just losing influence, we are actively handing it away. One petty tantrum and one back-channel photo op at a time, and I am turning back to the screen right as they are replaying his latest rant about disloyal generals and fake allies. And I am thinking, This is not foreign policy. This is reality TV with nuclear implications, and somehow we are all stuck as extras in the background while he is insisting the show is still about him. I am stepping out of the control room for a moment, just to catch a breath, leaning against this hallway wall that has seen way too many stressed-out reporters over the years, and I am listening to the muffled sound of anchors arguing inside, while I am checking updates on my phone again because this whole thing is unfolding faster than anyone can process. And I am watching yet another clip of Trump bragging about imaginary economic glory like he is narrating some alternate universe where numbers bend to his will. And I am thinking, here we go again. Another round of trillion-dollar fantasies with all the sincerity of a late-night infomercial. I am hearing him declare that America is suddenly swimming in endless tariff money, that wars are magically evaporating because other countries are scared of his tax threats, and I am staring at the screen wondering if he genuinely believes this stuff, or if he is just hoping the rest of us are too exhausted to question it anymore. Meanwhile, the real numbers are scrolling across the bottom in those somber blues and grays, consumer sentiment sinking. People worried about losing jobs, costs rising, and I am feeling this tension in my chest because I can practically hear the country grinding its teeth through every statistic. I am walking back into the media room, weaving between tripods and cold coffee cups, and I am hearing someone reading out loud from a report about Americans getting into more fights on airplanes, and I am catching myself letting out this dry laugh because it is also on the nose. Like the entire national mood is on a hair trigger now. One overhead bin away from disaster. I am not a philosopher, but I am standing here thinking that maybe this is what happens when leadership keeps telling people everything is perfect while their daily reality is anything but. I am watching a clip of the transportation secretary explaining, in the most polite bureaucratic way possible, that Americans need to stop acting feral at the airport, and I am shaking my head because it is surreal hearing the government speak like a disappointed kindergarten teacher. Right then, I am noticing another update about South Korea at the G20, talking partnerships, culture, soft power, all the deliberate, patient stuff that Trump seems allergic to, and I am remembering how earlier this week I was watching a segment on Korean exports booming simply because people abroad like their food and music, and the contrast is burning into my brain. Other countries are selling flavors and films while we are selling tantrums and tariffs. Inside the room, someone turns the volume up on another Trump rant, this one about poll numbers being the best ever, and I am watching the fact checks pop up almost instantly, side-by-side charts showing the reality he refuses to acknowledge, and I am feeling this mixture of irritation and secondhand embarrassment because it is like watching a guy insisting he won a race that everybody just watched him lose. Then another alert buzzes Ukraine pushing back against the Miami deal nonsense, and I am reading their response, point by point, and I am thinking how surreal it is that a country fighting for survival still has more clarity and composure than the leader of the United States. Reporters are now gathered around a cluster of screens, the room going quiet in that way it does when something important is hitting, and I am watching the split screen of global leaders at the G20 pushing forward with their own plan while Trump's allies sit in a Florida resort drawing borders like it is a monopoly board. And I am realizing the symbolism is so on the nose it feels scripted. The world at a summit, America at a beach meeting. I am running my hand through my hair because the absurdity is almost too thick to breathe through. And I am thinking how wild it is that Reagan used to be the Republican gold standard for standing up to Russia, and now his party's new icon is out here practically workshopping treaties with them over iced tea. And as I am standing in this cluttered room, watching all these screens light up with headlines about shifting alliances and declining trust, I am feeling that creeping dread that we are not just losing influence, we are surrendering it, willingly, almost enthusiastically, like a country that no longer remembers what leadership looks like. And I am glancing at the clock, even though time feels useless right now, because everything is shifting faster than I can finish one thought before the next alert dings again. And the only thing I am sure of as I gather my notes is that this meltdown is not slowing down. It is accelerating, and we are all being dragged along behind it whether we like it or not. I am stepping outside the building for a moment because the air in that room is getting thick with frustration and fluorescent fatigue, and I am standing on the sidewalk, watching a line of taxis roll past, while my phone keeps buzzing with more international updates, and I am realizing that the rest of the world is not just drifting away from Trump's America. They are practically sprinting, building parallel lanes at the G20, while Washington under Trump is stumbling around like it lost its compass in a convenience store parking lot. I am reading another statement from European leaders pushing back against that Miami-born peace plan. And I am shaking my head because their tone is firm but measured. The tone of grown-ups politely declining a toddler's suggestion to draw borders with crayons. And I'm thinking how embarrassing it feels to witness U.S. diplomacy being treated like a homework assignment done on the bus ride to school. I am walking back toward the entrance as a producer texts me the statement from Canada, the one about the shifting center of gravity in the global economy, and I am feeling this twist of irritation in my stomach because I know they are right. I know the world is balancing differently now, and I know Trump is too busy picking fights with imaginary enemies online to even notice. Inside the lobby, a TV is replaying footage from the G20 leaders laughing, smiling, exchanging documents. And I am noticing how effortless their coordination looks compared to Trump's perpetual crisis cosplay. I am leaning against the railing, watching the screen as the South Korean delegation showcases cultural partnerships, food, entertainment, soft power. And I am thinking how strange it feels that countries like Korea have figured out how to blend diplomacy with creativity, while Trump is still trying to bully the world into submission with tariffs and threats that nobody is taking seriously anymore. Someone nearby is talking about a Korean cultural event in South Africa, and I am reminded of my own encounters here with people from other countries, people who are curious, open, building, inventing, and I am realizing that the global community feels more connected than ever, just not connected to us the way it used to be. I am heading up the stairs again, and with each step I am replaying Trump's voice in my mind, bragging about trillions of dollars and world-shaking victories that do not exist, and I am feeling that second-hand embarrassment hit again, the kind that makes you wince even though you are not the one saying it. In the newsroom, everyone is huddled around a new report showing a record dip in U.S. consumer confidence, and I am watching faces fall in that tired, unsurprised way, like people who already knew things were bad but still hoped, somehow, that the chart would say otherwise. Someone mutters something about job loss, anxiety, and rising costs, and I am staring at the graph thinking how deeply unfair it is that regular people are carrying the weight of an economic fantasy invented by a man who thinks tariffs are magic beans. Then the story about unruly passengers plays again, fights, shouting, panic, and I am thinking, this is what it looks like when a country is stressed beyond its limits, this background hum of anger that leaks out in all the wrong places. I am sitting down for a moment, watching the scrolling headlines, and I am thinking of the absurdity of the government having to release videos about being polite on planes, like we are relearning manners while the world moves ahead without us. And right then another Miami update pops up. Trump's team pushing Ukraine to accept Russia's terms by some vague holiday deadline. And I am staring at it thinking how pathetic it feels to watch American influence shrink into ultimatums drafted by someone else's government. A reporter next to me whispers that it all feels like South Park, and I am laughing even though it is not funny, because the absurdity is becoming its own kind of logic now. I am rubbing my forehead as I scroll again, watching updates from the G7, from Europe, from Asia, all reinforcing the same story. The world is coordinating, collaborating, adapting, while Trump is fumbling around in a personal echo chamber where everything is either a victory or a conspiracy, nothing in between. And as I am sitting there listening to the newsroom noise swell around me, I am feeling this heavy, quiet realization settle in. This is not the world isolating America. This is America isolating itself. One impulsive tantrum and one misguided alliance at a time. And just as I am about to gather my notes again, another alert buzzes across the screen and pulls me right back into the chaos. I am sinking back into my chair as the newsroom lights dim slightly for the evening broadcast, and I am realizing I am watching a country lose altitude in slow motion, like a plane whose pilot is too busy screaming at passengers to notice the warning alarms blaring from every direction. And I am thinking how surreal it is that this has become normal. This constant sense of wobbling under the weight of one man's ego. I am flipping between screens again. One showing Trump pacing across a stage somewhere with that restless energy he gets when he feels ignored. The other showing clips of our closest allies signing agreements, shaking hands, and outlining plans that look suspiciously like the kind of work we used to lead before everything turned into a late-night rant competition. I am listening to Trump complain about disloyalty and traitors, and all these shadowy figures who apparently exist solely to insult him. And I am feeling this mixture of disbelief and exhaustion because it is astonishing how small everything feels when filtered through his personal grievances. Meanwhile, the G20 leaders keep appearing on the other monitor, talking calmly about supply chains, energy cooperation, cultural exchanges, and I am thinking how painfully obvious it is that the world has figured out how to operate without waiting for Washington's mood swings. I am hearing someone behind me reading Trump's latest claim about his highest poll numbers ever, and I am watching the fact-check graphic slide onto the screen like a teacher quietly correcting a child who insists 2 + 2 = 5 because he feels it should. I am rubbing my temples because the whiplash between his self-congratulating bravado and the actual numbers consumer anxiety, job insecurity, economic stagnation is enough to make anyone dizzy. Then another alert pops up about Ukraine's counterproposal, the one insisting on real security guarantees instead of whatever sunburnt blueprint Trump's team cooked up in Miami, and I am nodding to myself because at least someone in this mess is still thinking with a clear head. A producer rushes past me muttering about how America used to be the place others looked to for stability, and I am thinking, yeah, I remember that version of reality too, faintly, like an old movie I have not watched in years. The screen switches again to a segment about rising tensions on flights, and I am listening to an analyst explain how economic pressure and social strain turn everyday travel into a battleground, and I am thinking how perfectly it mirrors the national mood. Everyone irritated, everyone on edge, everyone tired of being told things are fine when their lived experience says otherwise. I am staring at the footage of passengers shouting, attendants ducking away, security stepping in, and I am thinking about how Trump's constant rage broadcasts are basically teaching the country how to behave loud, aggressive, convinced that volume is evidence. The room buzzes again as another international headline rolls across the monitors. New investments between Canada and the UAE. New cultural collaborations with Korea. New economic blocs forming in Africa and Asia. All with an ease that makes America's absence almost unremarkable. I am thinking how strange it is that we used to fear being replaced, and now we are watching the replacement happen in real time because Trump is too busy picking fights with his own government to notice the opportunity cost piling up. Someone drops a stack of papers near me and says the midterms might cut off the worst of it, and I am nodding slowly because I am clinging to that same hope. The hope that this spiral eventually hits a legal or political floor before it digs any deeper. I am scrolling again, and I am seeing Americans online arguing in circles. Some insisting this chaos is strength, others exhausted and searching for an exit, and I am feeling this deep sadness because the whole thing feels like a house where half the lights have burnt out, and no one can agree who should change the bulbs. Then the camera crew starts moving around, prepping for another segment on shifting alliances. And I am standing up, stretching, looking at all the glowing screens, and I'm thinking how brutal it is to witness a country lose its footing not through catastrophe, but through sheer neglect of reality. And as I am walking back toward the studio, the air buzzing with new alerts about global deals and domestic meltdowns, I am feeling the weight of every contradiction piling up around us, and I am realizing that this story is not slowing down, not calming, not resolving it, is accelerating, expanding, unraveling, and I am stepping into the studio knowing the next headline is already waiting to hit before I can even finish the sentence I am about to speak. I am stepping into the studio as the countdown clock is blinking red and the anchors are straightening their papers like it still matters. And I am settling into the corner of the set where I can see every monitor at once, each one a different window into the spiraling contradiction we are all trying to pretend is analyzable. I am hearing one of the anchors whisper, "Keep it tight, we're running long," and I am thinking how ironic that is, because nothing about this moment in American politics is tight. Everything is sprawling, messy, leaking into every part of public life like a slow-motion oil spill. The camera light snaps on. The lead anchor starts reading the headline about America's shifting global role. And I am fighting the urge to laugh because the phrasing is so polite it borders on delusional. What I am seeing is not a shift. It is a retreat, a shrinking, an erosion of credibility happening right in front of my face. I am watching the B-roll of Trump supporters cheering at some rally while he repeats the same fantasy about America collecting trillions in tariffs, and I am feeling this uncomfortable mix of pity and anger as the footage cuts to economists explaining how none of that is real. None of it matches any known ledger. And I am thinking how bizarre it is to live in a country where truth feels optional but loyalty is mandatory. Then the screen splits again, showing live coverage from the G20 as world leaders sign off on new agreements. Trade, energy, culture, infrastructure, and I am struck by how calm they look, how focused, how unbothered by Trump's volcanic monologues. And I am thinking, this must be what it feels like to graduate from a group project while one member is still arguing about the instructions. In the control room, someone is whispering that the Ukraine story is about to update again, and I am watching the screen refresh with the latest details. European leaders reinforcing their stance, G7 members aligning, Ukraine holding firm, the world stitching together a unified response while Trump is shouting into the void about betrayal. And I am feeling the weight of that contrast pressing down like a stone. I am glancing around the studio, noticing the faces of my colleagues, tired, focused, slightly numb. And I am thinking how exhausting it is to chronicle a presidency that feels less like governance and more like babysitting someone who keeps setting off the smoke alarm. The anchor moves into a segment about domestic stress signals, the rising cost of living, the record anxiety about job security, the erosion of public trust. And I'm thinking how Trump's speeches always sound like a man trying to convince the country it is thriving, while everyone else is quietly checking the price of groceries. Then the conversation pivots back to international affairs. The analyst explaining how nations are forging new partnerships in the vacuum we created, and I am staring at the glowing screens, feeling this hollow ache, because the story is no longer theoretical. It is here, tangible, unfolding in real time. While Trump is still obsessing over enemies he conjures out of thin air, I am watching footage of the G20 hall again, the steady hum of coordinated diplomacy, and I am thinking how surreal it is that the United States once directed rooms like that, and now we are not even in the room half the time. Someone signals that we are cutting to commercial, and I am exhaling slowly as the lights dim, feeling the fatigue settle into my bones as I realize the pattern is not changing anytime soon. I am leaning against the wall, watching the muted screens cycle through more updates about new global deals, more warnings about domestic instability, more footage of Trump pacing across a stage like a man trying to outrun his own irrelevance, and I am wondering how many more cycles of this we are supposed to endure before something finally snaps back into place. I am checking my phone again and seeing the world move forward another inch without us, and I am feeling that strange mix of dread and clarity as I head toward the exit, because the story I am witnessing is not about foreign policy or economics or even alliances. It is about a country willingly shrinking into the shadow of a man who mistakes chaos for strength. And as I push open the studio door and step into the hallway humming with fresh alerts, I am realizing that tomorrow is going to bring another avalanche, another meltdown, another moment where the world looks at America and moves on without waiting. And I am bracing myself for it because this is the new normal whether we like it or not.